Aloha, champions, and welcome back to my library. For this Wednesday activity, we are going to continue our reading of Sing Down the Moon by Scott O'Dell. And today we are reading chapters 11 and 12. In the previous chapters, Bright Morning, the protagonist, or main heroine of our story, escaped from capture from the Senora with Nehana, a Nez Perce girl, and Running Bird, her friend from her Navajo tribe. They are on the run from people who are trying to hunt them down for escaping as slaves. So, with that being said, we're going to start our reading today. Remember, with this, you can either read the PDF that is available in our Google Classroom, listen to Mr. Chambers as he reads, or do a combination of both in order for you to understand and answer the 5 to 10 questions needed for today's activity. So, without further ado, Chapter 11. Night was falling as we again reached the stream and the grove of budding cottonwoods. We had seen no sign of the Spaniards during the afternoon, but they were not far behind us. Our horses had begun to stumble, so we watered them, and we went a short way and rode into a draw that was hidden from the stream. "We will rest here until the moon rises," Nahana said. "It is too dark now for the Spaniards to see our tracks. Lie down and sleep. I will keep watch." Running Bird and I bathed our faces in the stream and ate some of the tortillas that she had brought. Then we went back where the horses were tied and laid down. I slept for a while and had a bad dream and awoke to the sound of my black dog barking. He was standing beside me in the grass, face toward the stream. Running Bird was already on her feet, trying to quiet him. I reached out and put my hand over his muzzle, but he squirmed away and kept barking. I ran toward the horses, which Nahana had untied. "He may be barking at a wild animal," I said. "It is time to go," Nahana said. The moon was rising over the hill behind us, but it was a dark night in the draw where we were hidden. There was no other way out of the draw save the narrow way that we had come. We started toward the stream where the moonlight glittered on the water and the cottonwoods. My black dog was still barking. Nahana said, "I would rather die than to be captured again." I felt the same as Nahana did. I followed her closely, and Running Bird followed me. The three of us rode out of the draw, gripping the horses' reins. We were ready to flee at the first sight of the Spaniards. Before we reached the stream, 2 horsemen came out of the trees into the moonlight. Something about them, the size of their horses, and the way that they rode, made me think that they were Indians. We were not more than a dozen paces apart. Still, I was not certain. The black dog rushed at them and stopped. Then one of the horsemen shouted to us a single word in Navajo. I knew the voice. I would know it anywhere. Quickly, I answered him. I think Tallboy was more surprised than I was, for he rode up slowly and sat there on his horse staring at me. Mondo, his friend, also stared at me. Nahana said, "The Spaniards are near." Without a word, the 5 of us rode off, Tallboy taking the lead. We rode hard until the first light of day. Tallboy spoke only once to me during the long night. It was about my black dog, and I had forgotten what he said, but I remember that it made me happy. Near dawn, while we slept, the Spaniards came along the stream. My black dog barked when they were still a distance away. We mounted our horses and rode out of the ravine where we were hidden. Mist was rising from the water. A cool wind blew from the east. It brought to us the sound of hoofbeats and the neigh of a horse. "We cannot outride the Spaniards," Tallboy said. "We will therefore go slowly on the trail toward home, as if we did not fear them. We will not heed them unless they speak. We will not fight unless they attack us." Tallboy said this solemnly, but I knew by the fire deep in his eyes that he wanted to kill all the Spaniards, that he would do so if the chance came. We went in single file along a bank of the stream towards the rising sun. The sound of hoofs was muffled in the tall grass. Mondo and Tallboy rode last with their lances sheathed and their bows unstrung. As the sun came up, the 3 Spaniards overtook us. The one with the white teeth spoke to Tallboy. "The women ride horses that belong to us," he said in Navajo. "The horses were stolen." Tallboy did not answer. He spurred his horse and trotted up beside Nahana and me, saying in a whisper that we should not dismount. We rode on, bunched together, the Spaniards close behind us. There was no sound except the ringing of hawks' bells on their silver bits. We came to a clump of trees beside the stream, where the leader shouted at us. I saw him swing down from the saddle and take a rifle out from its holster. The 2 other Spaniards pulled up their horses. Tallboy told us to ride on and stop behind the trees. Then he said something to Mondo under his breath. Together, they gave a piercing war cry. I had heard this cry before, many times since my childhood. It always froze my blood to hear it, and it did now. It sounded to me as if some evil spirit had leaped out from the far depths of the earth. The cry was not a human sound, nor the sound that any animal makes, whether in pain or fright. The leader held the rifle in one hand and the reins of his stallion. At the sound of the war cry, the horse leaped sidewise, dragging his master with him. By the time the Spaniard loosened the reins and brought the rifle to his shoulder, Tallboy swept past him and in one swift thrust planted the long lance. The other Spaniards, seeing the death of their leader, fled into the trees. Tallboy and Mondo did not pursue them. Instead, they motioned to us and set off up the stream. There was no sign of the 2 men. We had not gone far when a shot sounded from the trees where the Spaniards were hidden. A second shot struck Tallboy. He clutched the saddle horn, but he made no sound. He spurred his horse into a gallop, and we followed. There were no more shots. The Spaniards did not come out of the trees. In a short time, Tallboy slowed his horse. He had turned pale, and blood showed on his back. He stopped his horse and said, "I can no longer sit in the saddle. Take this rope and tie me there." Mondo and I took the rope and put it around his waist and tied him so that he could lean over the neck of his horse. The Spaniards did not follow us. We went slowly up the stream the way Tallboy and Mondo had come. We traveled slowly all day. At dusk, we made camp and helped Tallboy down from his horse and laid him on the grass. He ate a little food and drank some water, but I feared that he was dying. I sat beside him through the night, bringing him water when he asked for it. I prayed that he would not die. Tallboy seemed better the next day, so we rode faster and longer, making many leagues, but on the 3rd day, he could not climb into the saddle. Out of 2 willow poles and a blanket, we fashioned a sled and put him on it, hitching the sled to the strongest horse. We went slowly that day, and the next, and on the 5th morning, as the sun rose, we came within sight of our canyon. "You are near home," I said to Tallboy. "Soon you will be well." Tallboy looked at me and tried to smile. "I will ride on," I said, "and tell the medicine man." "Yes," said Tallboy. "Tell him that he is needed." Chapter 12. I rode hard toward home. The stone cliffs were dark, but far above them the early light lay on the crest, and the trees that grew there shone as if they were on fire. A dawn wind blew, smelling of earth and wood and smoke and corn ripe in the fields. It was a Navajo wind. Joyously, I breathed in. White Deer was tending her flock by the river. She must have believed me dead long ago. For a moment I thought she would flee. I spoke to her and rode on, and only then did she run after me, asking many questions all at once. It was the same with my mother and father and sister. They came running out of the hogan and stood there gazing at me as though I were a spirit. Not until I spoke and told them that Tallboy was wounded did they move or say anything. Bitterwater, the medicine man, was in the next village. My father and 4 other men went out to meet Tallboy and bring him in. When they came back carrying him on a litter, the medicine man had come with his bag of curing things: 2 round blue stones, a small object with an oval knot in it that looked like an eye, 1 eagle feather, and a groaning stick, a piece of wood from a lightning-struck tree. Tallboy was laid in the grass under a big sycamore close beside the river. He was pale and gaunt-faced, and kept his eyes closed, even when I spoke to him. The medicine man cleaned the wide wound in his shoulder with river water and the juice of malted berries. Then he touched him all over, from head to foot, gently with the blue stones, and at last with the little object that looked like an eye. That night Tallboy ate something, and the next day his father came and moved him to their hogan not far up the river. My sister helped me cook food that I thought he would like, and we took it to him. We went every day, and after a week he began to sit up. The color came back to his face, but he could not use his right arm. It hung limp at his side. My sister said he would never use that arm again. She said this to me as we were riding home. She said nothing more, but I knew what she meant. She wanted me to understand that he would never be able to hunt again, nor go out on raids with the other warriors. The next morning, my mother said, "You have 30 sheep, and they all need shearing. But before they are shorn, there are beans and squash to plant." "I will start tomorrow," I said. "This morning, I want to cook deer meat. Tallboy likes it better than anything else." My mother was combing her hair. She stopped and looked at me. "There are many women who can cook deer meat for Tallboy. The moon is ripe for planting." "The moon will be right tomorrow," I said. My mother went on combing her hair. "Your sister has told me that he has an arm that will never again pull a bowstring or throw a lance. That is bad fortune. He will no longer be a warrior, nor a hunter. He will have to sit with the women. Perhaps he will learn to weave and cut wood or shear sheep." My friend Running Bird said, "I feel sorry for him." Nahana, who was going to marry the son of a chief of a village far up the river, said the same. My mother tied her hair and stood up, pointing to the bag of squash seeds hanging by the door. "Plant the seeds deep," she said, "for the earth is very dry." Walking along in the hot sun with the bag heavy on my shoulder, I made deep holes with a stick and dropped the seeds in, 3 seeds in each hole. But my thoughts were not there in the field. Even when I tried thinking of my sheep, I was unhappy. I did not care, not for myself, whether Tallboy would ever be able to hunt again or ride with the warriors. But my sister and my mother did care, and there was nothing they would not do to keep me from marrying a cripple. It was my father who would decide, and he had said nothing. Yet this did not give me any comfort, for he usually did what they wanted him to do. When the squash and beans were planted, I helped with the shearing and drove my flock to the pastures by the river. The grass was not so good as it was on the mesa, but we were afraid to go too far from the village. Every week, my mother and I went to visit Tallboy and his family. She never again said anything about his arm, and when he had trouble, when it was awkward for him to do something, she always looked away in pity. By the time the hot days came, we did not go to see Tallboy anymore. Once in a while, he rode down to see us, but he did not stay long or have much to say. Then other boys began to visit, and came and sat under the trees in front of our hogan and joked with each other and played stick games. One night, my mother said, "It is time for the girl to become a woman. Tomorrow, I will send word of the womanhood ceremony. That concludes chapters 11 and 12 for today's reading. You have 5 to 10 questions to answer in Google Classroom based off of these 2 chapters. Hopefully you are continuing to enjoy the story, and I will see you real soon. Stay awesome.